Hey, welcome back. This is Jana. So recently there was a discussion in the group on Facebook about different yarn weights and plies and the numbers on the labels and all that kind of stuff. And I became aware that I wasn't really aware at all of the numbers on the labels, because when I started knitting, things were called, sock yarn or fingering weight or lace weight or cobweb. It's like super, super thin, cobwebby size. I mean, it's ridiculous to knit with, but but you get the idea. So it went from like the cobweb and then lace weight, and then there's, light fingering, which is usually like a 2-ply, but it's not quite lace weight, a light fingering, kind of a standard fingering, and then you'd have, worsted, Aran, DK's in there too. And anyway, so you got to know the terms of how things went from, lightest to heaviest. Well, now apparently there's numbers on all the labels, at least in the US, which I'm kind of flummoxed by, really. What I don't understand is, why can't we just call it what it is? So you'll see number 4. And people are starting to say in the group or in public, they'll say a 4 yarn. I'm like, well, what's a 4 yarn? What they mean is worsted. So I don't understand why we can't really call it like what it is. Because it's not even standardized, right? A number 4 is not even always worsted weight. For example, you'll see like a Lion Brand worsted or Vanna's Choice would be maybe classified as a number 4, which would be your kind of standard household worsted, right? That's available at all the big box stores like Joann's and Hobby Lobby and Michael's and places like that. But then you have other yarn suppliers. For example, Brown Sheep Company is a fantastic yarn mill that is regionally, it's kind of close to me. They have a Superwash bulky here, right? And it has a number 4. It has the number 4 on it. But this is definitely a bulky weight yarn, so this is not worsted. So this should be, in my opinion, labeled more like a 6 or a 7, and then an 8 would be like a super bulky, like really thick. So I'm not quite sure what's up with that. Really, what we're talking about here, when we talk about yarn weight or yarn size, that would be how many wraps per inch. So if I were to take some yarn, let me find some yarn here. If I were to take some yarn, I don't have an end. Oh, I do have an end. Okay, so if I were to take this and put it on a ruler and then wrap it like this around the ruler, making sure that the strands are touching, but I'm not wrapping it tight. Like, I don't want to be pulling on it. If I were to do that, it would be how many wraps per inch, at least in the United States. Now, I realize that's not the same as how many wraps per centimeters in the rest of the world. But how many wraps per inch is what you're really concerned about, without stretching and just laying the strands next to each other. So all this is to say that a worsted might be a worsted if it's the standard wraps per inch. So I'm going to include a nifty chart here that I'll link to in the video description. If it doesn't show up at the very, very top, you have to click show more, and I'll include the resources there. There's a handy chart I found on Ravelry that tells you internationally the plies. So that was something I learned this last week too. In Australia, we have a couple of fantastic and active members in our group on Facebook from Australia. They go by how many plies. I'm like, well, okay, that kind of confused me at first, because I thought, well, how many plies are in a yarn? Depends on how, doesn't that depend on how thick the individual ply is? So I could have a 3-ply that's a bulky weight, or I could have a 3-ply that's a sock yarn. So I kind of was confused by that. The chart will clarify that for you as well, so check that out. If somebody says you should use a worsted weight for that at a size 7 needle, well, maybe that's true, but that's simply a place to start. So when you look at the labels on the yarn, it will give you a recommendation to begin with, and it would say possibly you might want to use a size, like this one says 3.5 stitches per inch on a US size 10.5. That's simply a place to start, right? You are going to be unique to your own tension and style of knitting. I might get 4 or 5 stitches per inch. I might get 3 stitches per inch. So that's why gauging is so important before you start knitting an entire sweater, for example, because you don't want to be off with that. So down below, I will also link to my video that I've done relatively recently about gauge and why it's important. So check that out. So if somebody recommends worsted weight for a particular project, then absolutely that's going to refer to how the fabric feels when it's all knitted up. But what needle you use with any given yarn combination is going to be unique to you potentially and your tension while you're creating that project. This would be considered a 4. See, this says 18 to 20 stitches or for 4 inches. So that's going to be about 5 stitches per inch. But this is also classified as a worsted weight. But I'll tell you, the strand on this is nowhere near as thick as the strand on this. But according to the chart, they would both be size 4. Whatever. Okay, it is somewhat confusing. Yeah, it's definitely confusing. So all this is to say, check out the chart if you have any questions. That's kind of an invaluable resource. I've actually bookmarked that puppy on my browser. You could too. Okay, so another conversation here lately in our group was people were talking about, well, how many whips do you have? Whips, work in progress. And how many project bags? And we have people that are completely knitting monogamous. Like they work on one project and one project only until it's done and then they cast on something else. That's not me. I'm like, woo, squirrel. I'm all over the place. I don't even know for sure. I gathered up what I think are all my whips. There could be something hiding in the pile on my desk. I think I have 6 or 7. Maybe 8, I'm not sure. So, well, that's not counting the Block of the Month club that we're about to start, and I'm excited to show you that my yarn came. Yay! I'm excited to show you that. So let's just start there. Okay, so this isn't technically a whip just yet, but it's fixing to be because I'm going to start swatching and casting on to make the first video that will be released the first week of February. But we decided to go with shades of gray. Ooh, isn't that lovely? I know my camera is like adjusting the color, but isn't that fantastic? So I am excited about that. Yeah, it's super soft. This is a washable merino, but I really like working with merino, and this yarn has really nice stitch definition. I think it will have good stitch definition. It's wound. Let me see if I can get my camera to focus. It's wound. It's spun tightly. Right, I think that's going to look fantastic with all those cables and different stitches. So I'm really excited about that. This is the Madeline Tosh Vintage. Like I said, you can buy 1 skein a month if you want to go that route. This is a long-term project. We chose to go ahead and just get it all in one shot because it was on sale. So you do what's best for you. So that's one almost work in progress. I haven't actually cast on yet. Okay, so the other thing I have going, I have many works in progress. Where to start? Okay, this one, this is hand spun. So I can't tell you, this was some fibered, this was a bunch of roving I got from a mill, the Brown Sheep Yarn Company that's over in Mitchell, Nebraska. I was over in the area and I stopped in. They have a fantastic seconds store if you're over there where you can buy roving, you can buy their yarn in seconds. And so they have really good prices. If you're in that area, go check them out. Anyway, I bought a bunch of roving that I gave to my mom, and then she spun, and I ended up with, she gave back to me a whole bunch of, this is like worsted-ish. So that's fantastic. I am actually knitting the Utilitarian Faroese shawl. I'll link that down below. All the stuff I'll link below. You know I will. That's going to be awesome. I have a 2-color brioche hat that's kind of in timeout right now because, I'll tell you why it's in timeout. I had a great time knitting this, and if you haven't done brioche, you should. It's fantastic. So this is knitted with some alpaca yarn and some hand spun. The blue is hand spun, and then this is some alpaca yarn. But you can see how this is like the black ridge is dominant on this side, and then on the inside, the variegated blue is dominant on that side. So, but the reason I think I'm going to frog this back and kind of have a do-over with it is because I didn't start out with the proper size of circular needle, the proper length of cable, so it's a little big. I mean, it fits and it's okay, but it's a little slouchier than I would prefer. I would like it to fit a little better, and so I may go ahead and rip that back and, you know, practice my 2-color brioche skills and have a do-over with that. Okay, so that's another whip. Then I'm working on this sweater from my mom, actually, and this pattern comes out of a Vogue knitting magazine from 1994. So she did a purge and she had a bunch of these magazines and she gave me a bunch of them, but we were looking through them and she really liked this sweater and I said I would knit it for her. Of course, I'm really behind. It was supposed to be for Christmas, but, you know, she's patient. So we'll see. Anyway, this is going to be lovely. This is the back piece. The sweater's actually knitted in pieces. It's knitted in pieces and then stitched together, the panels, and it will have pockets, and I don't know how to do that. She's gonna have to help me. I do not know how to do that. I have never made a sweater that I had to knit the pieces and put them together. So I will work it out after she shows me, and we'll show how you put a sweater together. Anyway, so that's going to be pretty fantastic. Obviously, it isn't blocked or anything yet, but this is made out of a cotton blend that I also got from the Brown Sheep Yarn Company over in Nebraska that had a good deal because I need quite a bit of it, and so I got a good deal from their seconds store. So that's that. Let's see. Oh, here's a sock. Okay, talk about second sock syndrome. I usually don't have a problem with that. This time I did. Okay, this pattern is knitted from the cuff down, which I really like, and it's a pattern by Cookie A. This is called the Ornette Socks, but it's a twisted cable pattern, and you can tell it's got an amazing texture. You can see all that's going on. Now these, believe it or not, right here, that is not a cable. That's a faux cable. It's all these little, in the ribbing, pardon the occasional cat hair. Okay, this panel right there, those are not cables. It's just simply a way to create a fake cable within the ribbing. Sometime I'll show you that. Anyway, so here's number one. Number two, I have going the heel flap, and you know, the leg is done. Right, so there's another whip. Okay. All right, so then before Christmas, I was doing these fingerless mitts, and this was, again, out of some yarn I got a good deal. Blue Moon Fiber Arts has a sock yarn called Socks That Rock, and they occasionally will have seconds that they sell for a really good price, and if you're on their mailing list, then you have a chance to buy those. And sometimes they have ones where maybe there's spots that in the skein that didn't take the dye very well, so there'll be, you know, white spots or other imperfections. There might be a knot in the skein somewhere. But I really like this yarn because it's got a high twist, and it has fantastic stitch definition, and it's 100% superwash merino. So squishy, love it. Anyway, so I'm started these mitts, and see, so you can see right there, there's some spots, but these are just for me. They're for walking, and you know, there's some weird pooling that's going on, but I like mitts because I can tuck my fingers in, but then I can pop them out. So there you have it. Number two is almost done. Except for I still need to pick up the stitches. I have it on waste yarn. All I need to do here is pick up and knit the thumb. That's it. That's it, and then I'll be done with that. So that's, I guess, still technically a whip. That's almost a fob, finished object. How many is that? 5 so far? Okay, then the reason I brought this yarn out is I'm going to show you I have another huge Afghan project going. Again, a long-term thing. This is a modular thing that's knitted in rectangles and squares. So then it's put all together. It's the sampler Afghan in cables. It's kind of a Celtic sampler Afghan. And this, you knit a core, let's see, I think you knit like 4 of these, right? Obviously this is not blocked. And you know, you knit 4 of these and then you put it all together. So like this is they fit all together in different ways. That's a panel. Let's see. Here's another one that's a different Celtic knot. And then running down one side, you have this going down one side, right? That one's really long. And then on the needle, I have currently one of the other module, and this is a section as well. So that's kind of a long-term thing. I know, why am I starting a whole nother Celtic Afghan when I have one going? Because it's fun, right? So we're gonna do the block of the month thing. That will start soon. This is for that. I think that's all the whips I have. What I really need to do is put each one in its own little project bag and have a plan for finishing them before I start on anything else. Okay, so let me know what whips you have going on. Are you a monogamous knitter, or do you have lots of things going on like I do and kind of like scattered? You work on one this day, and is there a system to how you finish these things up if you have a whole bunch of whips like I do? Do you have a system for dealing with that? Or do you just like work on whatever strikes you at the time? Unless you have a deadline, of course, and then that's different. All right, let me know, as always. Thanks for watching. If you choose to support me over on Patreon, you can check out the benefits available to you over there. Otherwise, I'd definitely appreciate it if you would click like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.